Have you ever wondered why the Samaritans were so deeply despised in biblical times? In The True Story of the Samaritans, understanding the hatred surrounding them, we'll uncover the roots of this ancient animosity and reveal the surprising truths about the Samaritans' history, culture, and faith. This exploration will bring new understanding to a group often misunderstood yet crucial to many biblical stories. In this video, we'll trace the origins of the tension between the Samaritans and the Israelites, delving into the historical, religious, and cultural factors that fueled their rivalry. You'll discover how understanding this story can provide deeper insight into Jesus' parables and teachings, showing us powerful lessons about love, reconciliation, and breaking down barriers. Are you ready to see the Samaritans from a new perspective and uncover the real reasons behind the hatred they faced? How can this ancient story teach us about compassion and unity today? Join us as we explore the true story of the Samaritans and discover lessons that can enrich your own spiritual journey. Let's dive in. The origins of the Samaritans trace back to the divided kingdoms of Israel. After King Solomon's reign, Israel split into two separate kingdoms. The northern kingdom, known as Israel, with Samaria as its capital, and the southern kingdom, known as Judah, with Jerusalem as its center. Over time, the northern kingdom of Israel drifted further from the religious practices of Judah, leading to distinct beliefs and practices. In 722 BC, the Assyrian Empire conquered the northern kingdom, leading to the exile of many Israelites and the arrival of foreign settlers in the land. This historical event marked the beginning of a unique and complex identity for the Samaritans. As foreign settlers moved into Samaria, they brought with them various beliefs and practices that began to mix with those of the remaining Israelites. This cultural and religious blending led to the development of new traditions and interpretations, creating tension between Samaria and the Jewish people in the south. While both groups believed in the God of Israel, their practices and beliefs began to diverge. The Samaritans came to adopt a distinct religious identity that set them apart from the Jews, leading to a divide that would grow over the centuries. One of the major points of contention between the Jews and Samaritans was the place of worship. While the Jews in the south believed that Jerusalem, specifically the Temple on Mount Zion, was the only place where sacrifices and worship should be conducted, the Samaritans saw things differently. They believed that Mount Gerizim, near the city of Shechem, was the sacred place chosen by God. They even built a temple there, making it their central place of worship. This theological difference became a significant source of conflict, as each group claimed to have the correct place for honoring God. The Samaritans considered themselves the true descendants of Israel, holding on to their own version of the Torah and rejecting the centrality of the Jerusalem temple. This distinction was critical. While both groups shared similar scriptures, the Samaritans focused solely on the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of Moses. The Jewish community, however, also recognized other books as part of their scriptures, such as the writings of the prophets and historical texts. These differences in sacred texts contributed to the growing religious divide. As centuries passed, the differences in worship practices, beliefs, and sacred locations fueled hostility between the Jews and Samaritans. Each group viewed the other with suspicion, leading to deep-rooted animosity. The Jews saw the Samaritans as having compromised their faith by mixing with foreign cultures, while the Samaritans believed that they had preserved the true worship of God on Mount Gerizim. This mutual distrust would shape the complex relationship between the two groups and influence the way they interacted with one another. The Samaritans originated from a blend of Israelites and foreign settlers, leading to a unique cultural and religious identity distinct from the Jews. The differences in places of worship, sacred texts, and cultural practices created a long-standing division that would impact their history for centuries. Understanding these origins helps us grasp why there was such deep tension between the Jews and Samaritans by the time of Jesus, setting the stage for stories like the Good Samaritan and Jesus' encounter with the Samaritan woman. Over the centuries, tensions between the Jews and Samaritans intensified due to both religious and political rivalry. After the Jews returned from exile in Babylon, they were focused on rebuilding their community and faith in Jerusalem. The Samaritans, however, were already established in the region and followed their own religious customs centered around Mount Gerizim. Each group saw itself as the true continuation of the people of Israel, leading to an ongoing rivalry. This competition for religious identity and political power only deepened their mutual distrust and hostility. One key event that fueled the division was the construction of the Second Temple in Jerusalem. When the Jews returned from Babylon and began rebuilding the temple, the Samaritans offered to help with the project. However, the Jewish leaders rejected their help, viewing the Samaritans as having compromised their faith by mixing with foreign cultures. This rejection hurt the Samaritans and was seen as an insult, reinforcing the idea that the Jews viewed them as outsiders. The refusal to collaborate on this important religious project marked a turning point in their relationship, widening the gap between the two communities. The Samaritans' rejection from the temple project in Jerusalem led them to strengthen their own place of worship on Mount Gerizim. For the Samaritans, Mount Gerizim held deep historical and religious significance, and they believed it to be the true holy site chosen by God. They built their own temple there, making it a center for Samaritan worship. This act of creating a separate temple was a bold statement of independence, highlighting their belief in their distinct religious identity and their disapproval of the Jerusalem temple. This separation did not go unnoticed by the Jewish leaders, who viewed the Samaritan temple as a direct challenge to the centrality of Jerusalem. The existence of two temples representing two different religious centers further fueled animosity between the Jews and Samaritans. The Jewish leaders saw the Samaritan temple as a symbol of division, while the Samaritans considered it a testament to their own faith and heritage. This religious division between Mount Gerizim and Mount Zion became a major point of contention, symbolizing the deepening divide. Hostilities reached a peak when, around 128 BC, the Jewish leader John Hyrcanus led an attack on Mount Gerizim and destroyed the Samaritan temple. This act was not only a military assault but also a strong message that the Jews rejected the legitimacy of the Samaritan worship site. For the Samaritans, the destruction of their temple was a profound loss, both spiritually and culturally. It deepened the resentment they felt towards the Jews and cemented their differences even further, marking an irreversible split between the two communities. The conflict between Jews and Samaritans escalated over centuries due to a mix of religious rivalry, political struggles, and symbolic actions. From the rejection of Samaritan help in rebuilding the Jerusalem temple to the eventual destruction of the Samaritan temple on Mount Gerizim, each event added another layer of resentment. These historical moments shaped a lasting animosity, making reconciliation between the two groups nearly impossible. This complex background sets the stage for understanding why the Samaritans were often viewed with suspicion and hostility in the New Testament. In the New Testament, Jesus brings the Samaritans into his teachings in surprising and meaningful ways. One of the most well-known examples is the parable of the Good Samaritan. In this story, Jesus describes a man who was attacked and left on the road. A priest and a Levite pass by without helping, but a Samaritan stops to take care of the man, showing great compassion. This parable shocked many listeners, as the Samaritans were generally despised by the Jews. By making a Samaritan the hero, Jesus challenged the prejudice of his time, teaching that love and mercy should be shown to everyone, regardless of background. Another powerful moment involving the Samaritans is Jesus' encounter with the Samaritan woman at the well. This meeting was unusual, as Jewish men typically avoided conversations with women, especially Samaritans. Yet, Jesus spoke openly with her, discussing faith, worship, and even revealing details about her life. By reaching out to this Samaritan woman, Jesus broke down cultural and religious barriers, showing that God's love and acceptance were for all people. His willingness to interact with her demonstrated a new way of understanding community and compassion. The encounter with the Samaritan woman was deeply impactful. Jesus told her that the time was coming when worship would not be limited to specific locations like Jerusalem or Mount Gerizim, but that true worship would come from the heart. This message directly addressed one of the main points of tension between Jews and Samaritans, and it opened the door to a greater understanding of God's universal love. The woman's excitement after meeting Jesus led her to share his message with her whole community, making her one of the earliest evangelists. Jesus' actions toward the Samaritans often went against the social norms of his time. By including them in his teachings and interactions, he demonstrated that his mission extended beyond traditional boundaries. His behavior challenged Jewish society to re-evaluate its prejudices against the Samaritans and to see them as equally deserving of compassion and kindness. Jesus' message was clear. God's love transcends human divisions, and the kingdom of God is open to all who seek Him. The inclusion of Samaritans in Jesus' ministry was a radical statement in that society. Many Jews who followed Jesus found this difficult to accept, as they had been taught to avoid Samaritans. But through parables and real-life interactions, Jesus led His followers to rethink their attitudes and showed them that no one was beyond God's reach. He demonstrated that faith and love are more important than cultural or religious labels. Through stories like the Good Samaritan and His encounters with Samaritans, Jesus taught that compassion and understanding must override prejudice. His actions broke down centuries-old barriers and pointed to a future where unity and love would be central to His followers. These examples from the New Testament remind us that Jesus' message was, and still is, one of inclusion and boundless mercy, inviting all people to find a place in God's family. Jesus' interactions with the Samaritans offer timeless lessons about challenging prejudice. Through His words and actions, Jesus taught that a person's value is not determined by their origin, background, or religion, but by the goodness of their heart and the compassion in their actions. In a society where divisions often run deep, Jesus' message reminds us to look beyond labels and see each person as worthy of love and respect. This is a lesson that remains deeply relevant today, encouraging us to view others with kindness and understanding rather than judgment. One of the key teachings from Jesus' encounters with Samaritans is the importance of inclusion. Jesus consistently crossed boundaries, engaging with people whom society often overlooked or rejected. His open-hearted approach challenges us to break down walls of separation, whether they're based on culture, race, or religious beliefs. By welcoming everyone, as Jesus did, we create a community that reflects God's love, one that embraces diversity and extends grace to all. The story of the Samaritans challenges us to confront our own biases. Jesus' example urges us to examine any prejudices we may hold and to approach others with an open mind and a compassionate heart. Just as Jesus showed respect and care to the Samaritans despite centuries of tension, we, too, are called to rise above stereotypes and to seek a deeper understanding of those who may be different from us. This journey toward empathy is not always easy, but it is essential for building a more inclusive and loving world. In today's world, the need for understanding and unity is more important than ever. The story of Jesus and the Samaritans encourages us to bridge divides and to work toward a society where everyone feels valued. Jesus demonstrated that true faith calls us to be peacemakers, bringing people together and tearing down walls of hostility. By following His example, we can become agents of healing and unity, reflecting God's kingdom here on earth. The spiritual lesson of Jesus' approach to the Samaritans is one of radical love and acceptance. By choosing to show kindness to those whom society deemed outsiders, Jesus highlighted that God's love knows no boundaries. This is a powerful reminder that we are called to love and include everyone, regardless of background. In our modern lives, this means reaching out to those who are different from us and finding common ground through shared humanity and compassion. Ultimately, Jesus' interactions with the Samaritans inspire us to build a community that mirrors His love, a community where judgment is replaced by mercy, and separation is replaced by connection. His message continues to call us to act with compassion and to be mindful of the ways in which we can extend grace to others. The story of the Samaritans isn't just a historical account. It's a guide for living with kindness, inclusion, and respect in our own lives today. In this video, we've explored the fascinating history of the Samaritans, from their origins after the Assyrian exile to their important role in the New Testament stories. We discussed the long-standing tensions between Jews and Samaritans, the significant encounters between Jesus and the Samaritans, and the powerful spiritual lessons these interactions offer. Through stories like the Good Samaritan and the woman at the well, we see how Jesus challenged cultural and religious boundaries, reminding us of the importance of compassion and inclusion. The story of the Samaritans teaches us that Jesus broke down barriers and crossed divides to show that God's love is for everyone. Just as He reached out to those whom society often marginalized, we, too, are called to extend grace and kindness to people from all backgrounds. Jesus showed us that what truly matters is the love in our hearts and our willingness to see others as children of God, deserving of respect and compassion. As we reflect on the lessons from the Samaritan story, we are encouraged to break down our own barriers and examine any biases that might hold us back. Jesus' example calls us to reach beyond our comfort zones and to see the humanity in everyone we encounter. These lessons are not just historical. They are a call to action in our everyday lives, reminding us to build bridges of understanding and peace. If this story has inspired you, consider how you can bring this message of inclusion into your own life. Maybe it's reaching out to someone you might not usually interact with or simply being open to new perspectives. The history of the Samaritans and Jesus' interactions with them remind us that we are all part of a larger family, united by the love of God. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed learning about the Samaritans and the spiritual lessons from their story, please subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. How does the story of the Samaritans resonate with you? Have any parts of it challenged or inspired you? Your engagement means a lot to us, and we look forward to diving into more stories and insights with you in future videos. Let's continue exploring these powerful lessons together and strive to build a more compassionate world, following the example Jesus set.